Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 227, I chat with digital cinema consultant David Reisner about the ACES color management system for content production. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded October 9th, 2014. Episode 227, ACES Color Management. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by The Books. Beautiful, affordable flowers grown on an active volcano and shipped for free. For 15% off your first bouquet, visit thebooks.com/twit and use the code TWIT at checkout. That's THEBOUQS.com/twit and use the code TWIT to save 15%. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week's guest geek is David Reisner, a consultant in the digital cinema industry, who was here a few months ago talking about various aspects of the digital cinema industry, but we didn't get around to one of the most critical elements that is now coming up in terms of how movies get produced. And I really wanted to talk about that on the show. So here he is back again to talk about ACES. Hey, David, welcome back.
Welcome. Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me, and welcome to everybody who is in, good afternoon to everyone who's in an afternoon time zone, and good morning to everyone who's in a morning time zone, and good night to everyone who's in a nighttime time zone.
You know, this is a worldwide audience, so you're exactly right. It could be any time zone you want. Those who are logged into the live chat room, wherever you happen to be, morning, afternoon, or evening, can post questions for David as we go, also from there or from the chat room at irc.twit.tv. The live stream, of course, is live.twit.tv. And either way, I'm monitoring the chat room right now, and you can post questions for David as we go, and I will pass along as many as I can. One hint, if you put my screen name in the chat room, in the message, it shows up on in a different color on my screen, so my eye is drawn to it and I will see it more readily. My screen name is my name, Scott Wilkinson, with no dashes or spaces or anything like that. So we're going to talk about, this is going to be seriously inside baseball, folks, so get ready for some serious geekiness. But before we get into that, the first thing I want to mention is last time you were here, David, we learned that you have actually won an Academy Award and an Emmy in the technical division. It's not like you were on the big TV show or anything, but
well, momentarily.
Momentarily, yes.
my picture, momentarily.
Yes,
my
yes,
picture
a photograph
stood in for me. That's right.
Sort of like when the seat fillers, when you go to the show during the afternoon and they have pictures of the people who are going to be in those seats. Anyway.
And it wasn't even a selfie at my end. It wasn't even a selfie, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly. Anyway, you won an Oscar and an Emmy for some technical work and an upcoming Hollywood Post Alliance Award as well. And we actually have a graphic that shows what you won those awards for. It's graphic number 1. And I just wanted to show everybody. Here it is. Give us a 60-second overview of what the heck are we looking at?
Okay, let's see here. What I won for is the ASC-CDL, the American Society of Cinematographers Color Decision List. Josh Pines is the big brains, I'm the second big brains, and the Digital Intermediate Subcommittee of the ASC Technology Committee, also major contribution kind of collectively. The idea is to help get the creative intent of the cinematographer and director and production designer, but especially the cinematographer, to live through the production process. So be able to move it from set to dailies where people look at what's been shot, into post-production as the basis for what gets done, and then also to help translate that look or transmit looks between different facilities, both in the post-production, in the digital intermediate and color correction, and also from visual effects facilities. These days, when movies are made, there's usually anywhere from a dozen to maybe even 30 or 40 facilities involved in making them. In the old days, when we used film, the look was kind of built into the film's chemistry and the chemistry that it was developed with. We don't have that now. The ASC-CDL is trying to make up for that so that the look that the cinematographer intends gets closer to being delivered to the audience. And it's been very successful. It's used in making about 90% of motion pictures, about 70% of scripted series television, and in about 100% or 99% of what's called VFX turnover, when they take visual effects shots that they made and they give them back to the rest of the production to incorporate. So it's been really cool. It's really fun that almost every movie uses it.
No wonder you got an Oscar and an Emmy. That makes total sense because everybody is using this. I guess you would call this a workflow, right?
Well, it is an element of a workflow. It gets really complicated. That diagram is a workflow diagram. It's showing kind of a good generic workflow, and where the ASC-CDL fits in there, and where also the raw image paths fit in there, and that kind of stuff. Workflow is a massively complicated issue. ACES that we're talking today will help with some parts of it, but it will still be massively complicated in some other ways. The ASC-CDL is a component. We make some of the lines connections more capable. We help the whole thing work better.
Well, congratulations on winning the award and that achievement, which we all enjoy by watching movies and TV shows. So,
thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll make one other small note, which is also since a similar kind of fun. I vice chaired all the standards groups that did the motion digital cinema imaging standards. So I had a big hand in all those guys. And digital cinema is now on 85% of screens worldwide. Pretty much 85% anyway, maybe 80. So that's also a place where there's this faint hint of work that I did that's affecting audience eyeballs.
Yes,
and that's really cool. I almost had a hand in the UHD TV Rec 2020 EOTF, electrical optical transfer function, but we got kicked off by the Japanese in literally the last couple hours. So
oh man.
Yeah.
But we've talked about EOTFs, electro-optical transfer functions, before on the show, and that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
This is another piece of inside baseball called ACES, ACES, for Academy Color Encoding System.
Yes.
So tell us what it is, why it was developed, how it will improve what we see on the screen.
Sure. The way things have been done in the digital, well, or at least the electronic age, is people shoot, usually they get DPX. I don't know what it stands for. Glenn Kennel and Kodak can be thanked for it. It's a good system in a lot of ways. But the camera puts out DPX, that goes on to a data tape. The data tape gets sent to the post-production facility, which brings it in and uses that to do the post-production on the motion picture or TV show. DPX, there's many variations of DPX, and
DPX, we don't know what it stands for, but it's a file format that comes out of the camera. Is that what what really we're talking about here?
It is both a file format and an image encoding. So it's both the file, the shape of the package, the digital package, and also what the numbers inside that package mean. So if there's some 6-digit hexadecimal number, what color is that talking about?
Got it.
And it's because there's different variations, it can be hard to know which color is being discussed. And if somebody hands you a data tape with a DPX file on it, you don't actually know what's on it. Now, maybe they put a label with it, or they put a piece of paper in the envelope with it. And then does the person at the receiving end look at that piece of paper or read the Post-it or the label or whatever and put that into their system? Well, quite often not. They should. It's avoidable, but it's the world. And things come in. The most junior person who works at a facility is the person who loads that tape into the computer side of the world, and they probably don't transcribe that information. So somebody gets this tape with a bunch of image data on it, or these files. They don't know what those image files are supposed to be. They make their best guess. This is somebody who is not the most junior, but one step up from the most junior. Truly, and makes it their best guess with good intent, I'm sure, about what those images are. And then it gets passed to the next guys who are a good step farther up the chain, and they are also trying to guess what did the cinematographer intend, or what should the movie look like. Not really what did the cinematographer intend, but more, what do we think this movie ought to look like? This movie is MASH. What do we think that the shots in MASH should look like? It's not the way we prefer to have movies made, but it is the way it's been done. Film, we didn't have that so much. A little bit, but not so much.
Well, as you said before, film has depending on which film stock the director chooses or the cinematographer in collaboration with the director chooses, you'll get a certain look because of a certain stock. This stock will look different than that stock. But as you say, in the digital era, there is no assumption or default there. I mean, so it could be anything. And it's really disturbing to me that up until now, the director's intent on how the film should look may very well generally isn't, in fact, communicated to the people who then are going to work on it in post-production and put it together, in which case the end result might be completely different from what the director's vision was.
Sure. And it keeps being bad because once that stuff goes in, right, people then will be looking at their shots, and they'll be looking at the post-production process, and they'll be evaluating things based on the look that was set there. That will be what's showing up. And people get used to, really, really fast, get used to the way something looks. And that becomes the expectation for the show. May not be what anyone wants. It's just human beings. That's the way it works. And that means that the director himself may lose some of his vision, and the director and cinematographer may not be able to push the whole production, both the people in post and also, for example, studio executives who are looking to see how their money is being spent. Push them to somewhere else. So it starts looking one way, and if they want to change it to looking another way, that's hard, actually. So there's a lot of pieces there. Film was not perfect this way, but it was simpler. When film comes in the door, the stock has a characteristic that's very stable. Kodak and other companies have been very good about that. But then it's got to go through a bunch of chemical baths at different concentrations and temperatures. And some facilities were back then very stable about it, and some not so much. So, and then there's something called color timers who decided how long stuff would sit in different baths, and a cinematographer would have a relationship with a particular color timer sometime. So they could say, do it this way, and it would come out at the end of it, in this early stage of the production, pretty much the way they wanted it. So people knew how to work with it, and they had mechanisms to use. Were they funky? They were kind of funky, yeah, but they were usable and they were doable. Plus, there's a piece of film there that if you hold it up to the sky and you look at the sky, or you look at a light bulb, you pretty much see it. The digital stuff has got to go through a bunch of layers of software and computer, no matter what. That's much more abstract. It's not as hands-on,
right?
And that makes people uncomfortable.
And understandably so. JJ to the 4884 in the chat room is asking, tapes?
Well, not anymore, thanks to an earthquake and a tsunami.
What do you mean?
A couple of years, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't know what it is now, 3 years ago in Japan, right? There was an earthquake and a tidal wave and a tsunami, okay? And it really did damage to parts of Japan, okay? Yeah. That pretty much killed tape production at the professional end of things. And that event pushed people, sometimes kicking and screaming, into data-based, meaning file-based digital workflow. But that was really the event. That was it. That was the thing. It's a big deal. It's the real deal.
Yeah, it's a serious paradigm shift forced upon the industry.
Yeah,
so up until that point, you were still shooting with digital cameras quite a bit, but you were offloading that data onto a tape of some sort and then transporting that tape. Now, of course, I guess we can't do that.
Yes, that is correct. No, but that said, people still do use what are called LTO tapes for backups and to take stuff off of and able to put them on a shelf. I have very mixed feelings about that. I've done professional work in digital tape stuff for Seagate, for HP, for Sony. And, you know, at the end of the day, after doing that work, I'm not a big fan of digital tape. It's just...
Well, I can't say I'm a big fan of tape in general anyway. I much prefer random access. But I guess in terms of storage and archiving, well, that's a whole nother question. How do we store digital data in the long term?
Nobody has the answer to that question.
Exactly. So it's another topic of another conversation, another show. For now, let's get back to ACES. And clearly, no, it's all right. Clearly, I bet you're about to lead into how that solves the problem of maintaining the director's intent, the look of the movie as it comes off of a digital camera and stays in the digital domain the entire time.
Right. As ACES is adopted, it will solve this problem very nicely. Getting it adopted is still some issue. It's being used and will be used more. People are getting good results from it. They like what they're getting. But until people are really using it, it's not solving those problems. So ACES has got a very firm definition for what the numbers mean. Okay, when you look at an ACES file, you can say with certainty a particular set of numbers is supposed to correspond to a particular color and brightness. Okay, and some cameras put out ACES directly. Some cameras put out what you might call ACES Junior directly, called ACES is the official name. That's also a Josh and David and Jim Houston and other people too, production, but Josh and I had a big hand in it. As we did with the ASC-CDL, we're trying to give people a way to get this stuff done.
So tell me again the name of ACES Junior?
ACES Proxy.
Proxy, oh, okay.
So it is a proxy for ACES. It doesn't substitute for ACES, but you can slide it in there someplace when you need ACES, when you don't have the bandwidth for it. And in practice from cameras, you're going to get 10-bit, maybe and 12-bit if you do dual link. So ACES is a 16-bit 444, meaning full red, green, blue color every single frame processing. Lots of stuff. Normally what you get out of a camera with a single HD SDI link, that's the default digital camera interface. You're going to get 10-bit 422. That's saying you get 10 bits per color, and you get them roughly a quarter of the time or third of the time.
Right. It's just for people to understand, 444, 422, so on, are called color subsampling, and it's a way of eliminating certain pixels, I guess, color or certain amount of color information.
That's it.
From the signal in order to reduce the bandwidth required to carry it. And then that gets reconstructed at the other end.
Well, no.
No?
No, it can't. That data is gone.
Well, not reconstructed, I guess, re-synthesized, re-interpolated.
Synthesized and interpolated, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
That data is gone.
The data is gone, and some algorithm is chosen, different algorithms by different manufacturers to recreate that data from what data they do have so that they can drive their screen, their imaging device. The data is required to drive the imaging device, but it's gone. So people say, well, let's use the parts that we have to make good guesses about the parts that are missing. And those are not, in general, terrible. In general, they are not terrible. I'm very picky about images. Cinematographers happily are picky about images, and not just us. For those of you out there who are really picky about the image quality of the televisions that you're buying, when you pick one over another, it might partly be because of that interpolation. That may be affecting how it looks to you. The clarity of the image, the contrast, the aspects of the color rendition. You'll see it in textures more than you'll see it in lines, mostly.
Right. So ACES, can we say that it is a standardized way to represent mathematically or numerically the colors that are coming out of the camera, the dynamic range that's coming out of the camera, and that allows that look, or it allows more consistency and accuracy as the data, the image data, flows through all of these dozen or 20 or 30 different facilities.
Yes. And the first most critical thing about ACES is that it's very, very firmly defined. There's no guessing around about what those numbers mean. There's a real firm definition, and there's a big dog standing behind that definition. Forget SMPTE. SMPTE is some dog, but the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is standing behind that definition, and they're in the movie side of the world. They're the biggest dog. Yeah. You know, if they say you don't do it our way, you don't get an Oscar. You're not even a candidate. That has an effect on professional motion pictures and people who work professionally. Yeah, and they do say that. They'd say that for a digital cinema exhibition, and the SMPTE standards that came out of working groups that I vice chaired. But there's an Academy rule that says if you're showing a movie digitally, you have to show it this way. If you don't show it that way, it's not exhibition eligible for an Academy Award. So it's not exactly that, but it's similar. And ACES is really firmly defined. That's a very good thing. It has a very wide color gamut available, so that as you go on, as things progress, as new cameras come out and people's workflows adjust, it will have room to grow. Let's say it also has a very wide dynamic range. There's high dynamic range stuff is very hot topic these days. People are making a lot of buzz about it, and the monitors they'll have in their homes will do a lot more brightness than what's in the theater screens. It will, and people are getting used to that, and they like it, and that's okay. But it's a change, and ACES provides about 30 stops, maybe 30 stops of dynamic range, which is maybe double what you're getting in other formats, and maybe more than that. But ways to think of it. And ACES is also high precision. It uses half floating points, 16-bit floating point numbers, and the arithmetic that's done doesn't introduce noise very easily with those half floats. So in practice, it rarely will introduce noise. Whereas with integers, which we've been using, and often for stuff that you're watching, there's often 8-bit integers, sometimes 12, sometimes 16, but often 8, especially in Rec 709 stuff or things that have been touched MPEG. You're down to 8 bits for MPEG. You're going to get noise in there. And as you process things, you're going to get a mess. When you have 8 bits, you get 256 grayscale steps per stop. Okay.
Right.
When you have in ACES, you have 1,024 grayscale steps per stop.
Okay. You're getting ahead of the game here. We're going to talk about all of that in a little more detail. And you certainly have given us a great overview. I want to show a couple graphics here real quick, just as an overview section. Number 2 shows sort of a very basic ACES workflow. Describe this one for us very briefly.
Sure. I'm going to lean into the camera a little bit. I'm sorry, because the diagram's a little small for me to see on my screen. Yep. We have, that helps. Thank you. So the original scene going into the camera, and ACES is what's called scene referred. The numbers are describing what light hit the lens of the camera, not what's going on at the display. Rec 709 or HDTV is describing the display side. That's how the standard is based. We feel that doing camera-based scene referred is better. So you do the camera, It goes out of the camera into you get whatever the camera puts out, the camera's native output format, and maybe that's ACES in some cases. It's increasingly so. But mostly it's the camera's own thing. Then there's a standardized conversion for that camera into ACES. So there's a very well-defined way that is taking the camera's output and putting it into ACES. So once you're in ACES, and you really know what you've got, then you work in the ACES space and you do stuff to adjust the colors and to modify things in that little kind of rainbow box down there, the creative image alterations. That's also known as the LMT, the look management transform. That's one of the places, that's the place where the ASCCDL lives in that part of the ACES workflow. It's not the only thing. There's also something called CTL, which is color transform language for writing programs. And all those manipulations happen as metadata. So you leave the image data untouched. Okay, you leave the image data clean and unmodified, and you do this other stuff with metadata, and you transfer the image data and the metadata forward in the pipeline so that people know what you've been doing and can work based on it or can work from it.
And that's very cool that it's not destructive, so that if somebody makes a mistake along the way, you haven't, as they say, baked it in.
That's right. It's a very important difference, and it's a little bit controversial because, look, people like to do things the way they've been doing things. And look, people have been putting out great movies for some time. You understand that they say, hey, this is working for us. Even if there are hassles, we want to stick with it. I can understand that completely. I mean, I admire very much the people that actually get movies out the door. That's when I read a credit roll, I'm just, my chin is on the floor for the entire several minutes. But it's great work being done, but it can be done better with better results and more easily, which saves both time and money, which studios care about and others care about, and helps us make more movies and lets us put the time and effort into other aspects, so that something doesn't have to be as much of a tentpole to be able to have that level of attention paid.
Right.
So
the key here is that the ACES makes a very much more standardized playing field, that everybody knows what's going on and is playing with the same set of rules or the same data, and can then ship that out. Let's take a quick look at the rest of that diagram.
Yeah, I'll get it. So this says to convert to display intent, there's a thing called an ODT, which output display transform, or RDT. There's RRT, sorry. There's so many acronyms in ACES.
Acronyms. It's a total alphabet soup.
Yeah. But the idea is you take that ACES stuff, which means one specific thing, and you convert it for the display you're going to be looking at it on. Maybe that's a Rec 709 HD TV display. Maybe it's going into a DCP to be delivered to a theater for cinema release. Maybe it's a Blu-ray player. But there are standard conversions from ACES to each of those things. And then you do probably what's called a trim pass, which is a minor color correction to get it just where you want it. So far, we don't know a way around the trim pass. Maybe someday, but not yet, certainly. And then it goes to your display device, and from your display device, it goes to the screen, whichever kind of screen. Now, how people see it, the screen's characteristics is a big deal. Also, viewing environment is a big deal. And you guys the people who are listening to this conversation are very familiar, I bet, with most things not being very well adjusted, and beyond that, not being calibrated. I don't know about you guys. My display at home is calibrated by eye, except once in a while when I can borrow a serious meter from somebody. I would love to have it calibrated by meter. Certainly in my work, everything is very calibrated by meter because I care about those fine details. That's my job, is to care about those fine details. But
I'll have to come down to your house sometime and do a full calibration on your set. I'm happy to do that.
Oh, I would love it, Scott. That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Maybe you and Joe can fight over it. But and it's either way, however it happens.
Very good.
I would be much pleased. I've got mine use a Panasonic plasma. So. Oh,
perfect. I love them. Love them.
Yeah, it's not a 300. It's a good consumer.
Well, so I think I've got a fairly good sense of what ACES is. And next, we want to talk about two of the aspects that it addresses. One is color gamuts, which you mentioned earlier, and we're going to get into a little more detail. And the other is dynamic range. And I was fascinated by what you said about ACES allows a dynamic range of as much as 30 stops, which is way more than I think any camera can currently produce. Nonetheless, it's a very important aspect of image quality. So let me continue with that. Let us continue with that discussion in a moment. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is thebooks.com. Now, have you ever ordered flowers online? I know I have. Chances are you've been burned. I know I have. There's hidden shipping charges, chintzy upsells, and worst of all, what shows up doesn't look like what you ordered. And I hate when that happens. Well, thebooks.com is changing the way you order flowers online. That's THEBOUQS.com. Books, because they've taken bouquets and simplified them, which is really pretty cool. Now, the Books offers roses, lilies, daisies, all kinds of different flowers in beautiful, colorful, and creative arrangements. Thebooks.com sends flowers straight from sustainable, eco-friendly farms located, dig this, on an active volcano in South America. Seriously, volcano flowers. The South American volcano is 10,000 feet above sea level, which means more sun. And more sun means more color. These bouquets are fed by pure volcanic snowmelt and mineral-rich soil, which really makes a big difference. The bouquets cuts your flowers on the day you order them, and they're shipped straight from the farm, so you get the freshest bouquet possible. And all orders are backed by the Bouquets Happiness Guarantee. What could be better than that? You can also sign up for the Bouquets Concierge Service and arrange for the Bouquets to automatically deliver flowers on birthdays, anniversaries, or just because. Best of all, the pricing is upfront and the checkout process is painless. Your loved ones get beautiful, unique flowers, and you save cash. To send your loved ones incredible flowers grown on an active volcano, visit thebooks.com/twit. Bouquets start at $40, and you can double the number of blooms for just $10 more. And you'll save 15% off your first bouquet by entering the code TWIT at checkout. Plus, get free shipping within the U.S. That's thebooks.com/twit. And remember to use the code TWIT to save 15% at checkout. And we thank the Bouquets very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks.
A very high concept product.
Indeed. I kind of think so.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm going to try it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
It sounds cool.
It is. It does sound cool. It sounds extremely cool. In fact, we're going to see some pictures of flowers in a minute here, and it ties in beautifully. Let's talk about color gamuts, and these are the range, the specific set of colors that can be reproduced by a TV or that can be captured by a camera or a recording device. And we'll talk about the display side of things here, although I guess the camera side works the same. If we look at graphic number 4, we will see some common gamuts, color gamuts, and they are represented by these triangles. Now, this horseshoe-like of shape is called the CIE chromaticity diagram. CIE stands for something in French, but it's a standard way of displaying all the colors that humans can see. And that, in fact, that horseshoe is all the colors that humans can see. Then we have these triangles, and there are 3 of them on this diagram. And each of them represent the colors that can be reproduced by a display, or I guess, I had never thought of this before, but I guess also what can be captured by a camera or recording device, because all of these devices depend on reproducing colors using 3 primaries, red, green, and blue. And so the points of the triangle, the 3 points of each triangle, correspond to the red, green, and blue that the camera can capture or the device can display. And then everything inside that triangle, that TV or display device, has the capability of reproducing. The smallest one, the yellow one, is called Rec 709 or BT 709, and that's what you see on your HD TV. HD TVs today, that's what they can display. The wider one is called P3. That's the range of colors you see at when you go out to the cinema, a digital cinema, which, David, as you pointed out, is now 85% of movie theaters around the world.
Right.
The largest triangle is called BT 2020, which is one of the proposed standards for Ultra HD or 4K TV. But that's got some problems we're going to talk about a little later. Now, that's all very interesting, but let's take a look at the ACES gamut, which is the next slide, number 5. And notice where that triangle is. Tell us about this triangle, David.
Sure. ACES, first off, the triangles are a slice a given specific luminance. You get brighter, you get darker. What set of colors people can see changes some.
That's true.
But ACES is an encoding standard. So they want to be able to, defining ACES, wanted to be able to carry anything people can see. So we want to enclose the entire visual gamut. And you see that it easily does enclose the entire visual gamut. Yeah. And you see that it sticks up off the triangle that it's being enclosed in. Just for mathematical reasons, it's a triangle. Do some other shape would be complicated and costly. Extends up off the top left there up into the air. There's a triangle that doesn't have visual colors in it. Okay, and in the bottom left, there's another triangle-ish that doesn't have visual colors. And if you look at your graph there carefully, you'll see that the triangle for ACES goes below 0. Okay, for reasons that I cannot very well tell you, related to efficiency and certain specific usages, it was decided to make the ACES blue primary go to a negative value, use a negative number. That doesn't
make a lot of sense to me. How can a color be a negative number?
Well, mathematically it's a reasonable thing. In the real world, there's no such thing as negative light.
Right.
So that doesn't exist in the real world. It's an encoding thing. It's a mathematical thing. Mathematically, it causes some pain too. It's probably one of the reasons that a bunch of Adobe software doesn't support ACES yet. Partly is because of that negative blue primary, because they'd have to do special stuff to handle that. You can't. Software can be written to be happy with positive numbers, and then get unhappy when you start throwing negative numbers at it. Right. So that's probably an issue for some of the Adobe support of ACES. Yep. But it let that triangle be efficient, be pretty close to the visual gamut. And there are probably some other benefits that I can't tell you very well because I was not at all the meetings, just a bunch of the meetings. The ACES project has been going pretty well since about 2004. And it's been quite active.
10 years old.
Yeah, it's been quite active for the last 7 years. So that's a good long while. It's a lot of constituencies to be satisfied, a lot of people and areas of work that have different needs and requirements, and there's been a lot of fiddling in there. Plus, there's a lot of hard color work. Right now, there's frequent sessions with colorists, motion picture colorists, adjustments to very close to the 1.0 release. Other people than I should address that officially, but I can say informally that we're getting pretty close on the official ACES 1.0 release. And looking at some of those last set of adjustments to make it usable in a practical sense and do the job in the best way. We got a lot of people spending a lot of time looking at things and fiddling with things to deal with small variations. There's just a lot to it. Happily, the basic structure of ACES, the basic encoding chosen, the basic approach allows those small variations to be addressed and utilized. So the idea is that we do ACES and it stays for a good long while. There will be pieces that will be tuned up, but that the core of it stays for a good long while, and that people can use it with confidence. So it's worth spending the time up front to try and keep that stability, to keep people feeling confident, and to give people a good solid reason to feel confident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
one of the reasons to feel confident is that it encodes the entire visible spectrum, which can then be transformed into whatever gamut you end up wanting to display. So on an HD TV, it's 709. On a digital cinema projector, it's P3. On a UHD TV in the future, not currently, but hopefully in the future, maybe, it'll be BT 2020.
Right.
And we've got a couple of interesting examples of why that expanding the color gamut is important. I think it's number 6. Let's take a look at number 6. Yeah, here it is. Here we see, well, you tell us what we see.
Well, either way, Scott, is fine. Each of those pictures, the one on the left has got the yellow flowers. I imagine those are sunflowers, and it shows the spots in that CIE triangle where the colors that are in that picture live. That kind of cloud in there is saying these colors are what's in this picture. And you can see that you're going over the edge on 709 quite solidly.
The smaller triangle is 709. The larger triangle is 2020, and all that beautiful yellow of those flowers is outside of what 709 or an HD TV can reproduce, but it's within what 2020 can reproduce.
Yes,
and the same thing is true of the blue butterflies. If we slide over to the blue butterflies, which are technically known as morphos, typically found in South American jungle. I used to be a butterfly collector, so. But there we can see that the blue is outside of 709, but within 2020. So there's good reason to want a larger color gamut outside of what we currently have, 709. Another picture we have shows sort of a very colorful picture side by side simulation of what it would look like in 709 on the left, I think.
Versus 709 on the left.
Right. Versus UHD, it's labeled, but it's really close to 2020 on the right. And you can see a big difference in the orange, in the green, and the yellow. It just looks more realistic, really.
And this simulation is giving all of us using normal-ish displays an idea what the differences are, because we don't have that 709 and that UHD or that BT 2020 display side by side to actually look on. So this is, if we were looking at a 709 display and a 2020 display, this is what the difference would feel like, but it's not quite exactly.
Not quite exact.
The places where you see the differences most strongly in this image are good examples of where you would see the difference most strongly on the actual displays. This is just sort of amping up the differences a little bit so that they can be presented when we can't actually see them. It's a kind of a trick in some of this work.
Right, exactly, because no one out there watching this show has a 2020 display.
Well, or if they have a 2020 display, they're not actually seeing 2020 on it. Right. They may have bought a display that's sold as 2020 and that is heading in that direction, let's say. But 2020 is not a practically realizable thing at this point in time.
I agree. We're going to talk. It may never be. I did want to get to a question from the chat room. JJ to the 4884 is posing some good questions here. He says, my LG TV just got an update to the software. It now has a gamut setting. Should I set it as wide as possible? My response to that is no. Because the content that you are getting delivered to your TV, that you're seeing on your TV from a Blu-ray player, from satellite or cable, from streaming, any kind of source other than perhaps a computer is going to be encoded, delivered to you with a gamut of 709. And so that's what I believe you should set your TV to, because otherwise you're distorting the color that is being delivered to you. Now, there is an argument about this, and there's actually quite a lively discussion on AVS Forum about it. David, what do you think?
Well, a couple of things. First is basically I agree with you, Scott. If you're getting stuff delivered from, for example, Netflix or other OTT over-the-top delivery, internet-based television delivery, they can do what they please, right? There's no standard out there. It's hard for them to know what they're hitting exactly, but they could provide you information to let you make an intelligent choice instead of adjustments to see what they want you to see, or to get closer to seeing what they want you to see. In general, it's going to be 709. Now, for some of this stuff, actually yesterday at the ASC Technology Committee, we formed a working group to try and dig into these issues, to try and help lead the way towards cinematographer-motivated color and luminance encoding standards, so that there's a better chance of getting what the cinematographer wants to show up, not just on the cinema display, but also on home displays in the world that we're moving into with higher dynamic ranges and wider color gamuts. So you guys who are listening to this, nobody else in the world has heard this news except for the dozen people who were in the meeting yesterday.
Ooh,
so
a real scoop.
Yeah. So I'm secretary of and I'm giving myself right now clearance to have told you what I just told you. It's also my job to form that working group. So I'm okay telling you at this level this amount of stuff. But it is an important issue, because cinemas, a lot of people who make movies, what they really care about is that the audience gets the experience, and the experience is the art the way they want to be delivering it. It's you guys, everybody listening to this, you guys probably love movies and you love what they do. And this whole complicated pipeline and all the hardware and all the settings and all the pieces, all of those things are needed to give you experience. When there's people like Vittorio Storaro, who has this just amazing vision for what things should look like and how that should affect audiences. Roger Deakins, my God, is the man ever made a not good movie? I don't think so. And a bunch of other people too. The ASC Technology Committee Chair, Curtis Clark, has been getting a lot of praise for the work he's done with with a movie called Alamo Bay. Which is an older movie, but there's just been a very high-end conversion done to experiment with a lot of these issues. And it's going over very well in the people on the inside side of the world, just helping us understand what you can do with these things when you get all the pieces lined up reasonably. But it's really hard. It's really hard.
And it's not done yet. So
no, not and we don't get to make the decisions. Maybe that's a good thing and maybe it's not. But, consumer electronics manufacturers have their interests, which I will only contest sometimes. But there's certainly a big players, broadcasters. Does broadcast go away at this point? Do we want it to? Would we be sad? Would it be a problem? I'm not anti-broadcaster. I watch their programming lots. But there's also this so-called over-the-top OTT delivery, internet delivery from Netflix, from Amazon, from others, where there's a whole other set of decision makers who have a whole other set of things they're trying to deliver to us. There's even YouTube, potentially. They're a little different category. They have interests, but they're kind of more heading for the mainstream, whereas, for example, Netflix may well want to help define the BMW, if you will, or the Tesla of home delivery.
But I think ultimately, isn't it about delivering the director's intent as accurately and as faithfully as possible?
Well, you feel that way. I feel that way. I'm going to change it to from saying director, I'm going to say the creative team's intent.
Okay, fine. That's fine.
In practice, that intent is developed by the director, by the cinematographer, by the production designer. All those people have, and others, but especially those three, have big inputs to it. And if you had to pick just one person, I'm going to say the cinematographer, actually, because the cinematographer's job is the look of the movie, and their expertise is getting the look of the movie. When we shot,
isn't the look of the movie something that's determined more by the director?
No.
And then he communicates that to the cinematographer, and the cinematographer says, "Okay, I'm going to implement that in the technical way that I know how to do."
No. No. Certainly the director has a vision for the movie in every way. I mean, it's an amazing thing that the director holds in their head and their heart and their gut and their hands to envision and make that movie. And I will point out that it's quite often the case that certain producers in the thing also have big roles in that, not just because they've got the purse strings, but also because they have the motivation and vision for the project. I think producers are much underrated, actually. But the director has the place they want to go. Then the director typically picks the cinematographer, hires the cinematographer to realize that vision and help develop and define that vision. I guarantee that in any movie that Vittorio Storaro has shot, The Last Emperor, gorgeous movie. I don't know how many of you have seen it. I hope a bunch.
I sure have, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing work. But the look of The Last Emperor was developed by Vittorio with the director, but it wasn't the director who said to Vittorio, "Do it this way." First off, Vittorio's personality couldn't live with that. But second off, his expertise, his vision, his artistry. He understands the way that the look can be done and manipulated, and the way the look can be used to tell the story in just a different way. I mean, not just Vittorio. There's a bunch of people we could name. We could start going through the list. Think of not all, but many of your favorite movies. Some are not going to be as much about the look. Some are going to be strongly driven by the look. Skyfall, right, was a beautiful piece of work. And not just anybody could have given us Skyfall the way it looked. Take Iron Man 3. A special effects heavy movie, but an impressive piece of work. Okay. It may or may not be your specific movie. I didn't think that it was mine until I really watched it. And then, by God, they did a good job. And I really enjoyed it because, Downey is an amazing actor. The guys at Marvel had an amazing vision for it. And John Toll, I believe, shot Iron Man 3 and just amazing skill, and amazing vision to get those things on the screen.
When I think about the look, that's all right. When I think about the look of a movie, the first movie that comes to my mind is The Matrix.
Sure.
Because that, when you're in the Matrix, when they are in the Matrix, everything has kind of a greenish tint to it. And then when they're in the real world, it doesn't. So do you have any idea whether that look was the result of, or at the instigation of what were then the Wachowski brothers, or the cinematographer, or both?
I do not know. It's a really interesting question. I don't know. Another movie that has a very distinctive look is Gattaca.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And I don't know where that look got, who envisioned that look. For Gattaca, I'm really going to guess the cinematographer. But Matrix, there's a lot of, very creative, strongly opinionated people with a lot of influence involved early on in that production. And, they did a game-changing, a world-changing piece of work in certain ways. But I don't know who did what. It's an interesting question.
Web7941 in the chat room is saying, "I'm a cinematographer. Give me some info on what standards are coming." Well, that's what this whole show is about. The ACES standard, which is not quite done. I guess, what are you at, 0.9 of the spec? You're about to hit 1.0.
I can say, I'm comfortable saying that we're real close to hitting 1.0. Not real close like next month, but the next release, and it will be in a reasonable time frame. And I think, NAB is always a big event for the motion picture industry, and I would be very surprised if the release were not before NAB. I don't have any official statement about that, but just the way the industry works, I would expect the release to be before NAB. But
which is in April of next year.
Yeah. And we're getting very close to 1.0. We've made done a lot of good work, got a lot done. Not all the way there yet. And because the idea is not to have it change. Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to get a little more centered, and I get backwards on which side of it, which is left and which is right.
Yes.
But ACES is the thing that you should be paying attention to. And, if you're a cinematographer working at the professional end of the spectrum, ACES is going to be the biggest issue that you're going to be dealing with, and it's important.
And we should point out that there have been some 20 movies already made with it. So even though it's not completely finalized, there have been, as you pointed out to me, some 20 movies already made with it.
Yeah, and about more than 4, but at least 4 TV series, including Justified, which, as soon as they went ACES, started winning awards. And some of those were for drama. Absolutely, it's a serious piece of work. But some of them also were for the engineering quality of what they were doing. They were the first out of the gate on the TV side for using ACES, and people saw the results immediately. Those results went on the screen and affected audiences and judges of awards.
I'm also looking at the list here. I see Elysium and Oblivion. And what was another one I saw here? Oh, the Lego Movie. I saw that.
That's and I think that's tremendously fun. The Lego Movie, which we hear Lego, we think is that was a big deal. That used this one of the first shows to use this technology in a serious way. They knew that could get where they wanted to go that way.
Well, let's spend the last few minutes we have on dynamic range, which is the other critical part of ACES and of the future of displays. As you mentioned before, very often we only have 8 bits in order to define the range from black to white. And in fact, I forget which number it is. We've skipped a couple numbers here, but there's one where dynamic range might be in the 15, might be photo 15. No, I'm sorry, 10. Let's look at slide number 10 and see if that in fact looks like the, okay.
It's the next one. Sorry.
Yeah, it's probably 11. It's this one shows us kind of the range of light that we can see in the world. And it's in a unit of measure called lux, and it goes from 0.1 to 100,000. And that's what we can see in the world, and that's a dynamic range of 1,000,000 to 1.
And compare that to your display.
And compare that to your display, which is only 100 to 1. Or maybe several hundred to 1. Okay, here's the slide that shows how many bits, what happens when you represent brightness with some number of bits. If you only have 2 bits, you only get 4 levels of brightness, 2 to the second power. If you have 4 bits, you get 16 levels of brightness. And so clearly the more bits, the more smooth variation, the more different levels you can represent. Today's current standard on Blu-ray and TV and so on is 8 bits. We're hoping to get 10 or 12 in UHD, but that can only, we don't know yet. That's one of the problems.
Yeah, and that affects how many adjustments you can make. There's both the issue of the range from the bottom to the top, but how many steps in there. You don't want people to see When you change one code value, when you step one of those numbers by 1, you don't want people to see a change in the luminance, a change in the color when you step by 1, because then the image looks all blotchy. And if you have fast eyes, or if you pause a Blu-ray, you may see blotchy. Things have gone out the door that way. 8 bits is pretty dicey for avoiding the blotchiness. You have to pay attention. You can mostly avoid the blotch, but you have to really pay attention.
You have to be careful. Now, when we go out to the digital cinema, are we still seeing 8 bits there?
No. Digital cinema, we defined 12 bits. So 12 bits per color component in a DCP, a digital cinema package. Now, what the projectors do is an interesting question. I think, practically speaking, maybe you're seeing 10 or 11 bits in the projectors, but I have to check and see what Christie and Barco and TI, the chip manufacturer, are actually doing these days. But we defined it as 12 bits, and we defined it as 12 bits based partly on the practical issue of what could sort of fit through the pipes, but also on what's called the Barton threshold, a thing used in psychovisual stuff. It describes what people can see, what a JND, a just noticeable difference, is. And we did a bunch of testing. We had theaters full of people who were secretly, as it were, shown different levels, different ranges, different numbers. And with that testing, we came up with 11 and a half bits being visible. And so we went for 12 on the spec because it was crunching it as far as we were confident crunching it. And because at the time we did the spec, it was tight. If we were doing the spec today, we would probably do 16. Just because we can. Not because we think it's crucial. Although, there's all this HDR stuff. You guys at your homes, okay, in the theater, we're looking at 14-foot Lamberts, call it 50 nits. It's another brightness measure. Okay, with smaller displays than a cinema screen, it's 100 nits has an equivalent kind of feel. So 28-foot Lamberts, 100 nits. For what manufacturers deliver, what goes to the stores, you guys are probably looking at 200, 300, maybe even 400 nits in your homes. And that's changing what you're seeing quite a lot.
Exactly, which is why I also advocate calibration to a brightness standard as well. It depends in part upon your room. If you have a lot of ambient light in the room, you should bump it up, and a lot of displays can do that. But if you're in a dark room, you want to tone it down, and some people object to that at first, but once they get used to it, it really does have a more natural look to it. And the fact that, again, all the Blu-ray content, all the TV content is all processed and mastered, so with the assumption that the peak brightness is 100 nits. And that's what they're watching on their calibrated monitors in the studio as they do the mastering. And so once again, the companies that say, oh, we have a wide dynamic range on our TVs. Well, that's all well and good once we get high dynamic range content coming in, but we don't have it yet.
And we don't even have an encoding for it yet for delivery to the home. Right,
exactly. Got a couple of quick graphics to show before we end about high dynamic range. And I think I've shown these before when Joe Kane was on the show, but number 12 will give us an idea. Here is an image of a cable car station, and this image is exposed such that the interior of the station is correct. But look outside the station, it's totally blown out. So we look at the next one.
Yeah.
And David, take up the narrative from here.
Sure. They are Joe's images, and we thank Joe for them. He has done great work for us, our industry, and our homes, and continues to do it. This one is exposed so that you can see what's out there, what's on the outside.
Well,
and
to some degree, it's still a little overblown.
Sure. Yes. And partly I'm sitting farther back so that I don't choke up on the camera too much.
Right.
This is a more middle exposure.
Right, and then we go to the third image.
There we go. Yeah.
There you can see the outside of the train station or the cable car station, but the inside is totally dark. Now, those of us who are photographers are very familiar with this phenomenon, and you were talking before about how ACES encodes up to 30 stops, and between these three images that we just looked at, there must not, maybe that isn't even 30 stops.
No,
but it's. Go ahead.
I would say 16 stops there.
Okay,
maybe
which is
20.
about, 16, I think, is about the maximum that we can expect from current cameras. I mean, the Sony F65. I mean, I'm talking professional digital cinema cameras. The Red Dragon or Epic, I forget which one, has about 14 or 15 stops of
be
dynamic
careful about quoting red numbers.
True.
No, they have their own way of doing things, and they quote the numbers the way they quote them. The cameras are useful. Obviously, people use them, but you can't use a red camera based on the specs. You have to take it, shoot with it, and see what it does, and then how it fits for your project. You know,
right.
And of course, that's what you should do for any camera, even if it's somebody like Arri, who is pretty good about their numbers, or Sony, who is very good about their numbers, especially if you know how they do their numbers. But Sony is very good about their numbers, but you still have to take it out and shoot. Right. And then you know what you got.
Right. Exactly.
But I wouldn't quote any camera that I'm aware of at this point at over 15 stops.
Right. And so this is another aspect of ACES that I think is really great, is that you have specified a dynamic range of 30 stops, which allows for expansion into the future. It allows it to be stable and useful for a long time into the future, just like the color gamut that we talked about earlier allows it to be useful well into the future, because the color gamut that it represents and it encodes is beyond even what any human can see. So whatever we come up with in the future, it'll be able to be encoded in ACES. Same with dynamic range.
Yeah, and ACES will take, at the low end, 2 to the minus 14th, if anyone's got a calculator handy. And at the high end, 2 to the 16th minus 32. Those are the low and high numbers in ACES. And you will see very quickly that's a good range to easily accommodate 1,000,000 to 1 and let you do some work within it.
Boy, Dolby Vision, the high dynamic range system that most people are talking about, is talking about 10,000 to 1 as the ideal.
Right. Right.
So, you know, ACES goes way beyond that. So once again, as you said at the beginning, and I think this is a great place to end, you know, it's encoding the content, the visual content for color and dynamic range in a way that will remain valid and useful for maybe decades to come.
That's definitely the hope. And the idea also is that all the work that is being done in ACES now can be archived and carried through to the future to be used for whatever purposes we want to use it for. We don't want to go back to something to make the new, not a Blu-ray, a purple ray. I don't know what. And
ultraviolet ray.
That's right. When we go make an ultraviolet ray, we want what we need to be there. You know, or when there's are we currently at Kodak Premiere 3 film stock? When Kodak wins the lottery and gets a large infusion of money and comes out eventually with Premiere 23, you know, which is some whole different film stock with a whole different lamps in the projection rooms. You know, we want to be able to go to that.
Right, exactly.
Let's keep the art.
Let's keep the art. Exactly right. Well, let's good name. Good closing comment there. David Reisner, I want to thank you so much for being here and helping us through a very complex and, as I said, deeply inside baseball sort of topic today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Scott, for having me. I really enjoy it, and also to all the people at the other end. I'll go and visit the chat room briefly at the end here, because you know, this is all a group activity. Making movies is a group activity, and as you guys know, getting the movies shown in your home, moving them into your home and seeing them in a decent way is also a group activity. There's a lot of stuff yet to do, so we're all in this together for the art, because I kind of love movies. It's just this thing. Thank all of you for coming to this edition of Home Theater Geeks. It's a true pleasure to be here with you guys and with Scott. He's a champion on this stuff, and he's been around a long time. I've known him a long time, and he's stayed good. I personally am confident listening to what Scott says. I think about it when he says it to make sure, but Scott is in general going to steer me straight. And it was a pleasure to be with you guys, and I hope we get to do some of this again. Certainly there's a pile of tech in this stuff, just a huge pile, and it keeps us all busy. Thank you very much.
You can find out more about David Reisner's work at his website, d-cinema.us. You can find me, of course, at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv. And you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott, also at avsforum. And you can find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here on twit.tv/htg, and also on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Sandy Gross, a well-known speaker designer who was instrumental in founding Polk and Definitive Technology, and now runs his own company, Golden Ear Technology, with some really nice speakers that I heard at CEDIA in an Atmos demonstration that was really, really nice. So we're going to be talking about speaker design and Atmos and other stuff like that, so I do hope you will join me. Until then, geek out.